your English podcast.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into sources that tackle a really interesting challenge.
Yeah.
How to train your brain to actually think in English. Moving beyond that constant translation loop in your head.
That's right. We've been looking at material that gets into practical methods for making English feel more like a natural part of your internal world. The mission here really is to find those actionable techniques, things you can actually do to build confidence and fluency. And it starts by changing those thinking habits.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. A core idea that runs through pretty much all the material is that thinking directly in English, well, it isn't some special talent people are born with. It's a skill, something you can actually develop like any other skill.
Exactly. And the sources really highlight that common stumbling block, that feeling of, uncertainty. It comes from always translating from your native language before you speak, or even just form a thought.
Right, that constant mental juggling.
Yeah. And the goal isn't just about translating faster, it's about breaking free from relying on translation altogether. So English starts to feel more instinctive. One thing that came up, which is quite fascinating, is how many learners describe this point where English thoughts just sort of start breaking in to their thinking without them trying.
Oh, interesting. Like it just happens.
Kind of, yeah. But our sources talk about how you can intentionally, speed up that process.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? What are the practical steps? The sources seem to outline a few key practices. The first one might sound a little odd initially. It's called voicing your actions.
Yes. It sounds simple, maybe, but it's quite effective. The material suggests just starting by describing your everyday actions out loud. As you do them, simple things like, I am pouring coffee, or maybe I am opening the door. Really basic stuff.
Even if nobody's listening, just talking to the room.
Exactly, even then. Speaking it out loud helps create this direct link between the action, the English words, and your brain. It kind of bypasses that translation step.
Okay, that makes sense. You start with short, simple phrases.
Mm-hmm. And then you gradually expand. Make them a bit more complex. It helps vocabulary stick better. And it sort of embeds English into your daily routine. Like background noise, almost, but useful background noise.
Right. And building on that idea, the sources also really push for developing an internal dialogue in English.
Yes, basically talking to yourself, but inside your head, which again might feel a bit strange at first.
I can imagine.
But it's a very direct way to practice thinking in the language.
So what does that look like? You just narrate your day internally.
Pretty much, yeah. You could start by just describing your thoughts or your surroundings, like, I'm feeling a bit tired today, or that cloud looks like a rabbit. Simple observations.
Okay. And then the material suggests taking it a step further.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. You start asking yourself questions in English, internally still. Things like, why am I thinking about that? Or, okay, what should I actually do next?
So you're forcing your brain to formulate the question and then potentially the answer directly in English.
Exactly. Without translating the question first. The sources suggest trying this while you're, say, walking or doing chores. Mundane tasks where your mind can wander a bit.
Makes sense. Now, another crucial point that kept coming up was actively trying to stop translating.
Oh, absolutely. The material really emphasizes this. Constantly switching back and forth between languages is, well, it's a cognitive bottleneck. It slows everything down.
So what's the alternative? If you don't translate, how do you find the words?
The idea is to formulate thoughts directly in English by building associations. So instead of thinking the word for umbrella in your native language and then translating it, you practice visualizing
Hmm.
maybe a bright red umbrella the moment the concept pops into your head and linking that image directly to the English word umbrella.
So it's about creating direct mental links.
Precisely. And one tip is to set a small, achievable goal. Maybe just for 10 or 15 minutes a day. You consciously commit to thinking only in English. No translation allowed, even if it feels difficult initially.
That does sound challenging, but I guess manageable in short bursts. Did the sources offer any, practical aids for this?
They did, yeah. Some simple visual tricks, like using sticky notes, putting English words on objects around your house.
Oh, like putting a sticker that says door on the actual door.
Exactly that. Or window on the window, chair on the chair. Seeing the word constantly linked to the physical object reinforces that direct association we talked about. It makes it less effortful to recall the word when you need it.
That's quite clever, actually.
Hmm.
Simple, but probably effective.
And then there's immersion, of course. That's always key.
Right. But how much? Do you need hours and hours?
Not necessarily, according to these sources. Even short bursts, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes a day of engaging with English content can make a difference. Things you actually enjoy, that's important. Reading a short article, listening to a bit of a podcast or some music, watching a movie clip.
And the goal isn't necessarily to understand every single word.
Exactly. It's more about letting your brain absorb the language's natural flow, the rhythm, the intonation, just letting it wash over you and become familiar.
Okay. And what about actually speaking? Pronunciation came up too, right?
Yes, definitely. Saying new words and phrases out loud is crucial. It builds muscle memory for your mouth and tongue. The advice is to repeat after native speakers. Really focus on the stress patterns, the melody of the language. You could even record yourself or use apps to check your pronunciation. It helps with fluency and confidence.
Confidence is a big part of it, isn't it? Which brings us to the last major point, mistakes.
A really vital one. The sources are very clear. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't let that fear hold you back.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But they frame mistakes not as failures, but as, well, as essential data points, information for learning.
So see them as opportunities.
Exactly. The advice is, if you make a mistake, or if you catch one, try to figure out why it happened. Understand the correct version, and then consciously repeat it, maybe a few times. Every error you identify and correct actually helps solidify the right way of thinking and speaking for next time. It builds resilience, accuracy, all that good stuff.
Okay, so let's try to wrap up this deep dive then. Thinking in English, it seems, really comes down to consistent practice using these kinds of specific techniques. Things like narrating your actions out loud,
Cultivating that internal English dialogue.
actively trying to let go of translation, using those associations instead.
Using visual cues like the stickers.
Yeah.
Getting those short bursts of daily immersion.
Practicing pronunciation out loud.
And, crucially, embracing mistakes as part of the journey, not roadblocks.
Yeah. And these aren't just abstract ideas, are they? The sources present them as really actionable steps you can weave into your day.
Absolutely. And why should you care? Well, because freeing your mind from that constant translation grind can genuinely unlock significant improvements in your fluency and, just as importantly, your confidence when speaking English.
It really shifts the whole experience. So, thinking about that idea of daily practice being key, here's something for you, the listener,
Yeah.
to consider. Based on everything we've just discussed, what is one small, specific technique from this deep dive that you feel you could realistically try to incorporate into your routine starting today? Just one small step.